With no stranger to the Alberni Valley Words on Fire, her last appearance here was in July 2018. Remember that for the Alberni Valley Words on Fire trivia quiz later. Joining with us on the virtual stage now is content writer and editor Frances Sullivan, a blogger at Zigzagging Towards Zen. Sullivan, who has some Port Alberni roots, is finishing her second book, Adopting Elizabeth, while outlining a sequel to her first novel, On the Seventh Day. A research editor, she has contributed to Doug Mackenzie's World War II memoir, Tail End Charlie, and to the Fearless Life Guide and All to Love Project by M.J. Robertson. Thank God I got that right. She also has a song on SoundCloud.com I think you should listen to, but first let's welcome our good friend, Mrs. Sullivan. Surprise!
Surprise! Surprise! Hi, everyone. Oh, golly, it's so nice to see everyone, except my daughter, who I think fell back to sleep, unfortunately. She wrote to me and said, have I missed it? And she's disappeared, so I don't know. Anyway.
I think she's on. I think she's under AWF, WOF.
Really?
So that looked like a picture of her.
Where?
I think she's there. Yeah.
Is she there? Did she make it on?
Yeah, she said yay.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay, well then I won't wait because I'm messing around. Oh, hi, baby girl. Hi. There she is. Hi, darling. Okay. Okay. So let's just move along here and get to the job at hand. This story is about a woman called Celia Jameson who's about to turn 50 in 7 days. And her best friend, Orrin Kavanagh, proposes that she look at her life because she's become less than she could be. She's a bit of a bitch, I guess, and he wants her to have a look at her life. So she buys into this plan that he proposes as Genesis. Start at the beginning, start with nothing, and move ahead one day at a time. She's got 7 days to do it. And she falls for it, but this is a ruse by Orrin, who knows something about her life and knows that her whole life has been a lie, essentially. So where I'm going to read now is when it's day 3 and Celia has found out now that Orrin knows about her parents, who they really are, what they really were, and she's not taking it well. And then she gives Orrin the chance to tell the very first part of her story. This book is in the first person, which, well, we can discuss that later on if we want to. So without further ado. Oh, really? Please do me the honor of explaining what your good reasons could possibly have been. I'm listening. Sorry, I meant to say that that's where I'm starting, is that Orrin has said he's had good reasons for not telling her anything about her life. Orrin looks up at me, cocking his head in that way of his, which means he is checking to see if I really am listening. I'm still hovering over him, so he stands, which forces me to straighten up and move back. This is an intentional move on his part. It's meant to shift the power dynamic so that I become subservient. The sort of thing you do with a naughty child. So to answer your question, well, you were the good reason, see? You needed help and support, not more trauma. But first, we needed to get you to stop digging yourself deeper into that pit you were in. Hell, there wasn't a ladder in the world big enough to reach you at one point. His brief soliloquy ends and he drifts away, staring out at the water. Pensive, his brow all knotted up and tight, his eyes squinting, he looks forlorn, and it softens me. I wait, assuming he will go on and tell me more, but he doesn't. So I break the ice. Did you look for a rope instead of a ladder, maybe? That might have worked. Ropes can be really long. There is no cynicism in my voice. I'm attempting levity as a way of telling him that I know how bad off I was and that I'm grateful, will always be grateful for his help. He starts almost imperceptibly when I speak and comes back from wherever he was in his head. Stepping closer, he reaches out his long arms and wraps them around me. He pulls me to him and lets his chin come to rest gently on the top of my head. When our George learned the truth, he hated keeping it from you, you know, but he honestly believed he couldn't risk telling you. He thought it would send you completely off the rails. It still might. Your family saga gives proof to the adage that truth is stranger than fiction. You were the unwitting victim of your family's subterfuges your whole life, growing up with one lie after the other. You were collateral damage, my darling. When I found out, I pecked at George more than was fair, asking him to find a way to tell you, but the time never seemed right. Then he got sick, so everything was put on hold. And yes, you're right, I've been an ass. In my defense, when my parents died and then George, well, I didn't have it in me to take care of you, too. I turned inward to lick my wounds. It's no excuse, see, but it's the only one I have. Oren is convincingly contrite. His expression, the deep sorrow in his eyes gets to me again, but this time it's only for a second. Aha, that's what this week is really all about, isn't it? You set this questy thingy in motion so you could unburden yourself. And am I right in thinking you've only scratched the surface? Oren nods dejectedly so. The nausea comes from nowhere. Retching, I stumble to the toilet and vomit out what little I have in my stomach. Oren collects my hair and holds it back with one hand. His free arm is wrapped around my waist. I am not ready for this. Closing my eyes, for a fleeting moment, I am in your arms again. I don't do pain meds well, I tell him. They always make me sick. Tea, he whispers. Tea would be lovely. With our mugs in hand, we head outside and walk back to the water's edge in silence. The musky, sweet smell of leaves scents the autumn air, making it easier somehow to listen as Oren does his best to prepare me for what I'm about to hear. What I've got to tell you isn't easy, see. In fact, parts of it are horrific. I'll stop when you want me to. You'll likely need some breathing space and time to digest and all that, but please let me just get it out, okay? You're really scaring me, oh. Seriously. But yeah, okay, you've got my undivided attention. And with that, Oren begins to tell a tale of secrets and lies. They grew up together, sharing an idyllic life, the kind afforded them by their surroundings and station. Although she was above him socially, they took no notice of that. Times were changing, after all. Even as a little boy, he knew he would make his way in the world, a world that always included Elizabeth. She felt the same way about Timothy, as she called him. To everyone else, he was just Tim. As they grew older, however, and remained as close as they had been when they were kids, your grandparents made their feelings known. Lizzie was destined for great things, which included marriage to a great man. While Gerald and Anne loved Tim, having watched the boy grow up on the farm. He wasn't son-in-law material. Tim's father was respected and valued, no doubt, but a lead hand who had proved himself worthy to rise to the ranks of farm manager was an employee and would remain an employee, not a member of the family. The three adults did their best to separate Lizzie and Tim, but nothing worked. Finally, in an act of desperation, Gerald and Anne sent your mother to a girls' boarding school. She was 13. Of course, Lizzie hated it, running away repeatedly until she was expelled. Another school was found, and then another, until eventually no amount of money could persuade even the neediest institution to take a chance on the girl. Not one to be bested, your grandfather put your mom on a plane to Ireland. He had managed to convince his mother, Maeve, that she was the only one who could rein in Elizabeth. Along with the nuns who would be her new teachers, Lizzie was sure to finish school, stay out of trouble, and forget Tim Collins. The move seemed to work to everyone's surprise. Your mom fell in love with the simple life, the landscape, the lilt of the local accent, and the music that played everywhere. Her lyric soprano pipes got quite a workout in the church, the pub, and in the community center. A true beauty with her bright as sun smile and emerald eyes, she was the toast of the West Coast village. She flourished in the attention, had plenty of new friends, and enjoyed turning herself into a good student, bringing home top marks. She did not, however, forget Tim. She just got better at hiding it. Elizabeth had taken to writing long letters when Maeve was asleep. Late into the night, she would write page after page, filling Tim in on her day and on her hopes and dreams down to the smallest detail. She ended every letter the same way. I am empty inside without you. I long to hear your laughter and feel your hand in mine. I am your Lizzie, body and soul, always. All of these letters were not sent, of course. That would have aroused suspicion, and she didn't want to ruin anything because her plan was working. She was going to be allowed to come home for Christmas. Tim found it hard to mask his excitement at the news. It had been almost a year since he'd seen her. Reading letters was the high point of Tim's day, and they helped, but his body ached for her. You see, what no one knew was that they had become lovers. Certainly, some suspected it, but they were still so young, it was easy for the couple to pretend otherwise. They wanted to pretend too. It was their ace in the hole. When Elizabeth finally arrived home, the two kept their distance, which made everyone happy. Because eyes watched them, they communicated via paper airplanes and strategically placed notes. Ideas were discussed on how they would mastermind a meetup, which was proving extremely difficult. Closer to Christmas Day, the fates intervened on behalf of the couple. Anne's mother, your great-grandmother, had fallen and had to go into the hospital. Gerald felt he should travel with his wife to assist her and to see to his mother-in-law's care, and of course, Elizabeth was to go with them. She was crestfallen until Robert, Tim's father, reminded Gerald that because they were anticipating an early delivery from a prize mare and would be short-staffed, he could use an extra set of hands. The lead hand also rightly suggested Elizabeth would be happier staying put on the farm. He would gladly keep an eye on the girl and abide by the rules to keep Tim away from her. Gerald trusted Bob Collins with his life and knew his word was his bond. His suggestion and assurances helped Gerald and Anne make their decision in Elizabeth's favor. She would not have to go with them. Robert Collins was a clever man, a horseman first and always. He scrutinized people the way a horse does, with equal parts instinct and wisdom. There is never any pretense, no duplicitousness. With him, questions are direct, answers straight. He does not mince words or suffer fools, and so he knows exactly what is going on with his son and the boss's daughter. Once he had hoped the infatuation that existed between them would fade naturally, but it had not, and now he worried that all of these efforts to keep them apart was having the opposite result. And then there was that other thing, the way his horse sense niggled him regarding Lizzie. He loved the girl like a daughter, but there was something in her nature, something unsteady, almost twisted. He could never get a clear read on her, and his gut jiggled about it sometimes. He would do some sleuthing while things were quiet and the Quinns were away. Lizzie's face is appropriately solemn as she waves goodbye to her parents. After all, her grandmother's in the hospital and no one knows the extent of her injuries yet. The fact that Lizzie barely knows the woman does not matter. Family first, her father always says. So Elizabeth plays her role flawlessly. Once the automobile rounds the bend, her solemnity is replaced with childlike enthusiasm. Her face beams as she gallops toward the barn and straight into Tim's arms. Hiding in a corner, Robert watches the pair, giving them a bit of privacy before making his presence known. Stepping out of the shadows, he clears his throat with a loud ahem, startling them both. Tim jumps up immediately and starts to tug at his shirt. Elizabeth doesn't show any signs of embarrassment. Robert grins and tells them to saddle up. Elizabeth is halfway to the tack room when Tim hesitates and turns to thank his dad. He stops short, though. The man is watching Elizabeth. Puzzled, Tim is just about to ask his father what he is thinking when Elizabeth reappears. He will have to ask him about it another time. The pair, although monitored at arm's length by Robert, are free to wander together now. They fish in the stream, ride on the trails, and make plans for their future. When darkness shelters them, they explore each other eagerly with an awkward innocence. Once spent, they bundle themselves up in their parkas and each other's arms, lay back, and gaze up at the stars. Tim asks Lizzie to marry him. She says yes, gleefully. 2 days after her grandparents' departure, the mare starts labor. Robert alerts the two that the delivery might well be a long one since it's her first. He says he won't bring staff back in unless it's absolutely necessary, and he won't be calling the vet until he's needed either. He will be relying on the teens. Robert takes special note of Lizzie's reaction. She seems to find all the hubbub diverting, while Tim is clearly honored to have his father's trust. As the birth became imminent, the kids scurried to fulfill Robert's demands. Tim knew the drill, having assisted his father at several births, but this would be Lizzie's first. She never seemed interested in this part of farm life. Tim tends to believe it's because of the incident with the kittens. When he mentions it, Robert's curiosity is piqued and he asks his son to explain further. Tim recalls that it happened shortly before she was scheduled to leave for that last boarding school she attended. He was cleaning one of the sheds when she appeared with 6 dead kittens in her arms. Elizabeth told Tim she found them in the lean-to and would he take care of them, clean them up for her. It was never spoken of again. Tim figured Elizabeth had seen the birth and with them all dead, was just too hurt to deal with it. That was the first time Robert had heard about the kittens, and his gut did a flip. He would have to give this more consideration when he had the time. At sunrise on Christmas Day, the foal is ready to make its appearance. Gerald and Anne have gone 3 days now, but plan to be back by dinner time. The veterinarian arrives to assist and record the foal's information into the official registry. Things progress without a hitch, and by mid-morning, a healthy little blood bay thoroughbred filly becomes the newest member of the Doolin farm family. Tim feels a rush of emotions, excitement, pride, and love. He turns to his father to tell him how perfect the little filly is, but his father is looking at Elizabeth with that same look he saw earlier. Tim looks over at Elizabeth then too, only to see her turn and walk away without a word. Robert could not have foreseen what would happen next, although for the rest of his life he blamed himself for it. He had finished up in the stall and retired to his office to finish some paperwork surrounding the birth until, alerted by the mare's snorts and pawing, he raced back to the stall. What he saw took his breath away. Elizabeth, bent over the now still foal, had her hands cupped over its nostrils. He screamed viciously at the girl to get out of his way, shoving her hard into the stall's boards where she landed with a thud. He didn't care. His attention was solely on the filly. He worked rapidly to deploy every technique he knew to revive the little creature as the mare tossed her head and shuffled her hooves. In obvious distress, she kept bending to nuzzle her baby, hoping for a response, but in the end, neither one's pleas nor prods could bring the foal back to life. Robert leapt up and turned on Elizabeth, his face the color of rage. The girl cowered, but only slightly. He picked her up roughly and, holding her off the ground by squeezing her shoulders, demanded to know why she had done this. Tears of fury clawed at his eyes. His heart raced, his guts spasmed. Elizabeth pointed at the foal and said she needed to clean up the mess. Years later, after learning what happened that day, Tim asked his father about the look that had puzzled him. You were watching her walk away and had a strange expression on your face, he said. Robert told him he was watching Lizzie the way he always watched a new foal, to see if it was sound. Sadly, said the older man, I knew she was not, but by then it was too late. It was just too damn late. Thank you.
Oh, it was very emotional. Beautiful. Well done.
It was very good.
Love.
Thank you.
So I just think if there's a time for a question and answer session for Francis, now would be the good time to. We got her now, so questions. Once everyone's dried their tears, of course.
Oh, that's lovely. This is lovely stuff. Thank you, Francis. That was really enjoyable. So how long is your manuscript on this? This is a manuscript and not a book. Do I have that right?
I haven't published it yet. The manuscript is finished, but I am constantly, and it seems, lost in my edits. I finished this 2 years ago and intended to publish it much before now, and I'm still working, and I let it go and I go back to it, but it's pretty much ready now. So I plan to have it fully published and available by October, which is Celia Jameson's birthday, which is the protagonist's birthday.
Oh,
Yeah.
So is that the story you were writing here, or is this a new one?
Yeah, no, that's the story. That's that part that I read. There's one of the reasons reading that part, which is kind of a giveaway, but it's not. It just sort of explains the lies and the subterfuge that the protagonist was raised with were not simple. They weren't clear cut, and she loved her mother, and so as she learns the truth about her clearly insane mother, it becomes increasingly hard for her, the protagonist, as the 7 days unwind, to to kind of keep it together. And this is why telling her was always so hard, because she was in a very vulnerable and frail state for several years after the loss of her friend George, and other people in her life, and other things that went wrong in her life. I won't say too much more. And I mean, we all go through that, but most of us don't then turn around and find out that our entire life at 50 years old is a construct, partially based on a need to protect her mother, who was crazy, and a psych like crazy, deadly crazy. So,
Well, I don't know if you're seeing the comments. Your daughter's saying amazing. Well done, Mama.
oh, thank you, Molly. Thank you, Molly. And thanks, Chris. I heard you say that. Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone. I have read that over and I wrote it, and yet reading it always sort of gets to me, because it's yeah, Bill's nodding his head. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's just a little hard to read.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you don't have any more questions, perhaps we should
Move along.
Let's move on.
No
And if you do have questions, you can ask her
Oh,
afterwards.
riveting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thanks, Chris. Oh, hi, Dawn. I didn't see you there before. So should I mute myself and let you get on? Who's Steve or Carl, or who's?
Yeah, mute yourself.
Mute myself. Okay. Boy, that's a hard thing. A man telling a woman to mute herself. Woo!
Press mute. Yeah, there you go.
And so